Today, in the short time we have together here, I'm going to attempt to convince every one of you, younger and older alike, that rocks are the most important things in your lives. Now, I'm talking about your physical life. There are far more important spiritual things in life than rocks. However, rocks are the most important physical things in your lives. You can't live without rocks. I'm going to make 4 statements here at the outset that you might have a hard time believing. Maybe you won't believe me offhand. But by the time I'm done talking to you and showing you things, I hope I will have convinced every one of you that everything I'm about to say is true. Number 1, you can't live without rocks. If there were no rocks out there in the Earth's crust and on the Earth's surface, life could not exist on Earth. Number 2, you have to eat rocks every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner if you hope to survive in life and grow to a ripe old age like myself. As I mentioned, I turn 83 next month. Number 3, the entire world's economy is built on and based on rocks. Not Facebook, but on rocks. Okay? Now, number 4, well, I should mention, since the entire world's economy is built and based on rocks, that we'd have no income sources without them. So number 4, if you were to take the time to do a scientific study of your own composition, that is, study what you're made of, and then take the time to do a scientific study of the Earth's composition, that is, study what the Earth is composed of, and make a chart of what you learned in each area, a chart of your composition, a chart of the Earth's composition, and take the charts that you would make, put them side by side, as I have done here on the end wall, and compare them. Well, what do you find when you compare your composition with the Earth's composition? You find that you're nothing more than a walking rock yourself. So with all those thoughts in mind, I think we all need to learn more about the rocks. Because the more we learn about the rocks, the more we learn about ourselves and others. Now, I'm going to forge ahead, attempting to prove to you that all those statements I just made are true. Now, I want to lead your eyes first over here to this chart on the wall. It's called the periodic table of elements. And on the periodic table of elements, all the known building blocks of the universe are listed. And they're listed by a chemical symbol. Now, each of those chemical symbols represents one of the elements known to humankind that chemically combines with other elements in nature and forms what we call minerals. Now, on this chart, there are only 103 elements listed because this chart was published back in the 1970s. Now, in the 1990s, I've got a new chart that had 111 elements on it because 8 more elements were discovered in the interim. Now, today, we know of 118 basic chemical elements. Again, they're the building blocks of everything that exists in the universe. And there are now 118 known elements. I haven't acquired a large enough chart to post here yet because it was just recently published. Now, I want you to realize that there isn't anything that exists in the entire universe that isn't made of those elements. In other words, they form everything that exists. And that includes the hair on your head, your eyeballs, the seats you're sitting on, the clothes you're wearing. That includes the floor I'm walking on, the food we eat, the clouds that drift lazily overhead, the stars, the sun, the moon, the planets. Everything that exists in the entire universe is made of basic chemical elements. So I think it's really important when you're young to learn something about those elements, because they control everything that goes on in life. So we need to understand something about them and their importance to us. So now I'd like to lead your eyes over to a display I have here, a 4-row display that I call the Earth in a Nutshell. Now, in the top row of this display, I show you some of those basic chemical elements which are represented on the periodic table by a chemical symbol, but here you see what they look like when they've been extracted from the Earth's crust. Here you'll see some of those basic chemical elements that form everything that exists. Now, in the second row of my Earth in a Nutshell display, on the left side of each frame, I show you more of those basic chemical elements. Then on the right of the elements, I show you the minerals that these specific elements chemically combine in nature to form. These elements form these minerals, these elements form these minerals, and so on. And the 118 known basic chemical elements chemically combine in nature, and they form just over 3,900 scientifically accepted named minerals. Then those minerals, once they have formed, mix together in the molten magma chambers under the Earth's crust. Now here I have an illustration of a volcano. At the base of the illustration, you see a big red blob. That big red blob is called a magma chamber. And in the magma chambers, all around the Earth, under the crust, those elements which chemically combined in nature to form the minerals, those elements and minerals all mix together when melted in the magma chambers. And when they mix together, they form what are called aggregates or groups of minerals. Now, who can tell me the common name of an aggregate or group of minerals? Anyone? What is an aggregate or a group of minerals? Yes.
H2O.
That's a mineral you're describing.
Oh, wait, yeah,
Not,
I forgot.
yes.
A rock?
A rock. I'm very pleased you know that. Yes, that's true. A rock is nothing more than an aggregate or a group of minerals that mix together when molten in the magma chambers. And as they cooled, that molten mass formed what we call rocks. So on the tables you see, I have large sizes of the 3 basic classifications into which all rocks are grouped. But I'd like to have your eyes return to the 3rd row in my Earth in a Nutshell display here. And on the left side of each frame, I show you some basic rocks from the Sierra Nevada mountain range above us. And then on the right of each rock, I show you the minerals that mixed together when molten. As they cooled, they formed that specific rock. These minerals form this rock, these minerals form this rock, these minerals form this rock, and so on it goes. And there are just over 250 scientifically accepted named rocks found in nature. Now, all those rocks then that have formed when the minerals which were formed of elements have mixed together in a molten state and cooled, once those rocks have formed, they're divided into three basic classifications. They're called igneous, metamorphic, and sedimentary rocks. Now, here in the fourth row of my Earth in a Nutshell display, I show you two types of igneous rocks: extrusive and intrusive igneous, metamorphic rocks, and sedimentary rocks. So if a person can picture in their mind this Earth in a Nutshell display, then that person can understand the Earth in its simplest form. Now, there are many complications between each stage of the development of Earth. However, you don't have to understand all those complications. Only if you're going to become a professional in the field of geology, then you need to understand the complications. But otherwise, all you need to do to understand the Earth is picture it in this manner in your mind's eye. Everything is made of basic chemical elements. They chemically combine in nature to form minerals. Minerals mix together in the molten magma chambers to form aggregates or groups of minerals, commonly called rocks. And rocks are divided into three basic classifications: igneous, metamorphic, and sedimentary. Now, if you can picture that in your mind, you can understand the Earth in its simplest form. Now, when I began, I made 4 statements, one of which was you can't live without rocks. I said you have to eat them every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner to survive in life. I just happen to have a container of food right here. You have to eat every day if you hope to survive and grow to a ripe old age and be healthy all the way along the way. Now, you look at this, and I know you're all very polite, and you won't necessarily say what might be on your mind, but you might be thinking, what's the matter with that old man? Is he crazy? He thinks we eat rocks? Well, let's look at this a little more closely, shall we? I have a list of all the essentials in your daily diet for good health and long life listed here. I also have a list of the 30 essentials in the daily diet listed here. All of these are basic chemical elements found in the Earth's crust. Now, here we are with these minerals which were formed from basic chemical elements, and I've told you you have to eat them every day to survive in life. Have you ever heard that iron is important in your daily diet? It is. Well, here's a wonderful source of iron found in nature. Do you know the mineral name? Call it out.
Pyrite.
Very good. That's correct. What's its common name? Fool's gold. Very good. Tell me its compound name. You see, every mineral is made of basic chemical elements, and the compound name of the mineral describes the elements which chemically combined in nature to form the mineral. What is its compound name?
Iron sulfide.
Excellent. You're absolutely correct. Iron sulfide. Now, every compound has a formula. Who can tell me the name of the formula of this mineral? Or I'm not meaning the name of the formula. Who can tell me the components in the formula? Okay. Yes.
Iron and sulfur.
Iron and sulfur. Now give me its formula. Fe(S)2, which means for every molecule of the structure of this mineral, it's what? 1 part iron and 2 parts sulfur. So you see 2 basic chemical elements chemically combined in nature to form this mineral. And it's an essential in our day. Both of them are essentials in the daily diet. But a larger quantity of iron than sulfur is required. Now, why can't we just go out, get a chunk of pyrite? We find it all over the world, and especially here in the mother lode country. Why can't we just go out and get a chunk, take a big yummy bite, and get all the iron we need in our daily diet? Would that work? What would happen first bite? We'd break our teeth off. So why does this old man say you got to eat this stuff? Well, let's look at it a little more closely, shall we? Have you ever heard that calcium is important in your daily diet? Yeah. It certainly is, isn't it? Here are two natural, wonderful sources of calcium found in nature. There are many others, but these are quite important sources of calcium. This is a mineral, and this is a rock. It's actually a chemical sedimentary rock. Now, who can tell me the name of this mineral? Just call it out. Calcite. Excellent. I'm very pleased. Calcite. Who can tell me the name of this rock? This rock is weathered down particles cemented together of this mineral. Does that give you a hint? This rock is known as limestone. Okay. Now, limestone is weathered down particles of calcite. They're both wonderful sources of calcium. Who can tell me the compound name? Remember, the compound name describes the elements which mix together to form the mineral. Yes?
Carbon sulfide.
Well, you're pretty close.
Is it the calcite or calcium?
Either one. They're both exactly the same.
Calcium carbonate.
Very good. Give me its formula. Anyone? CaCO3. That means that three basic chemical elements chemically combined in nature to form this mineral: calcium, carbon, and oxygen. 1 part calcium, Ca, 1 part carbon, C, 3 parts oxygen, O3. So it's called calcium carbonate. But both of these are wonderful sources of calcium. Why can't we just go out, get a chunk of either? Because they're found all over the world, and especially here in this area, the mother lode country. Why can't we just go out, get a chunk of either, or get both of them? Take a big yummy bite and get all the calcium we need. Would that work? No. We already broke our teeth off, didn't we, trying to get iron out of pyrite? So now we'd have to gum this. Do you think we could gum it and get what we need? I don't think so. So what does that tell us? Doesn't that tell us we need these materials, but we're not designed to eat them in this form, are we? But we have to have them. So let's very quickly look at just a few more. We don't have time to look at all the essentials, but we'll look at a few more. Have you ever heard that zinc is an important part in your daily diet? It certainly is. Here's a wonderful source of zinc found all over the world. It's a mineral called sphalerite. It's mined by the tons all over the world, and zinc is extracted from it. How about a trace of copper? Have you ever heard a trace of copper is important in your daily diet? It is. Here's a wonderful source of copper. This is just one of the many, many found in nature. This is called malachite. It's an ore of copper that's mined by the tons all over the world, and copper is extracted from it. Ladies also like to have it cut into jewelry pieces and wear malachite jewelry. It's especially interesting to the American Indian tribes. They use it often along with turquoise, which is another copper phosphate material. Now, have you ever heard a trace of magnesium is important in your daily diet? Here is a wonderful source of magnesium. This is a mineral called dolomite. It's mined by the tons all over the world, and calcium and magnesium are extracted from it. Now, anyone know the compound name of this mineral dolomite? Calcium magnesium carbonate. How about its formula? CaMgCO3. That means 4 different elements chemically combined in nature to form this mineral. A wonderful source of those elements. But again, we're not designed to get what we need in this form, are we? We can't chew this material and digest it. Let's look at one more important and essential element in the daily diet. This is a mineral called halite, Halite. Now, halite has a compound name. Anyone know its compound name? Sodium chloride. Anyone know its formula? NaCl, which means for every molecule of this mineral structure is 1 part sodium, 1 part chlorine. So, wonderful sources. Yes, that's exactly right. I was just going to ask you, tell me what its common name is. Salt, table salt. You shake it on your food and eat it. You cook with it. We preserve meats with it. It has so many uses. And this is the one mineral you can extract from the earth in its elemental, or let's say in its natural mineral state, and eat it in this form. People ask me, does it taste like salt? Why, it certainly does, because it is salt, sodium chloride. And when it's this pure, you can eat it directly from the earth. So here we've looked at many of these materials that are essential in the daily diet, but we know we can't digest them in this form. We can't even eat them in that form. Can we? Well, how do we get what we need? We have been given a wonderful blessing in life, and most of us don't take the time to think it out and realize what it is that makes it possible for us to get what we need out of the rocks. This wonderful blessing we've been given in life is called the plant. And I don't know if you realize it, but the seeds of every plant have been designed to eat rocks for us. And that's exactly what they do. And so we put seeds in the soil. Now, seeds are a lot like us in that they have to eat to survive. They have to eat to grow. And so what do seeds eat? Why, seeds eat dirt, don't they? Because what is dirt? Why, it's weathered down particles of rocks, isn't it? So you see, I repeat often during my presentations, and I'm going to repeat again now. I do that because a long time ago, a very intelligent individual said, if you hope to help anyone learn anything about any subject, what you have to do is tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them, and then tell them what you told them. Now that's called repetition. And all our brains, I don't care whether they're younger brains like yours or old man brains like mine, all our brains are designed to learn through repetition. And so I repeat again, everything is made of basic chemical elements. Those elements chemically combine in nature and form minerals. The minerals then mix together in the molten magma chambers under the Earth's crust, and they form aggregates or groups of minerals as they cool. Now, we have a common name for this. We call it a rock. But the rocks have various names as well. This one is called granite. But in this rock, from the Sierra Nevada range above us, you can see all kinds of different shapes and colors. Those are all the different minerals that mix together when molten, and as the molten mass cooled, the minerals crystallized out, forming this aggregate or group of minerals we call a rock. Now, interestingly enough, around 92%, that's the bulk of our essentials in the daily diet, around 92% of all the essentials for life are found in that rock. Now, that rock is difficult to chew, isn't it? No, we couldn't do very well, could we? But we need all those essential elements that are in it. How do we get them? Well, rocks weather down, don't they, into tinier and tinier particles until they ultimately form soil or dirt or tiny particles known as sediments. And so here I'm showing you in this gold pan some dirt, which is weathered down particles of that specific rock from the Sierra Nevada range above us. It ultimately weathers down to dust. The dust blows around, gets into streams, is carried into the seas, and the seas become enriched with the essentials of life. But unfortunately, we can't take a dipper and dip a drink of seawater and swallow it and get what we need, because many toxic materials are also in that seawater. So we also can't go out and get a handful of dirt, even though it contains the essentials of life. We can't get a handful of dirt, swallow it, and get what we need, can we? Because our stomachs aren't designed to eat and digest material in this form. So that's where the plant comes in. You see, the plant has to eat too. So the plant eats the dirt. It begins to grow. It starts on its path to producing fruit and vegetables. Now, as the plant grows, it sends down little dendritic networks we call rootlets. And those rootlets are searching for food to eat, and also they're searching for another compound that's essential to life. That compound is called dihydrogen monoxide. Ooh, that sounds dangerous, doesn't it? Monoxide? A lot of people have died from carbon monoxide. Well, I'm going to tell you the formula of this compound, and I want you to tell me its mineral name. Its formula is H2O. What is H2O? Call it out. Water. So you see, water is a mineral also, made of two basic chemical elements, hydrogen and oxygen. 2 parts hydrogen chemically combine, 1 part oxygen, and they form water. Now, plants need water, we need water, all life forms require water. So the plant extracts water from the soil as well as food, and it gets water from above, because water is recycling all the time on Earth, even as the rocks are. And so ultimately, that plant grows to maturity, and when it matures, it produces things that look similar to what I have in these gold pans. Now, we have a name for this kind of material, and please don't tell me plastic, because some of the younger groups I work with say, oh, that's just plastic. Well, that's true. It is just plastic. But if I kept the real thing in these, I'd have to be changing it very often because it would spoil. So I use plastic replicas to show you what plants produce. Only part of what they produce. There are many other items. But we have a name for this kind of material. We call it food or foodstuffs. But do you realize we wouldn't have to have named this food at all? That's just a term we use in our language to communicate our thoughts to one another. We could just as easily have named this material rocks in a different form, because that's all food is. It's nothing more than rocks that have been converted into edible substances. We can eat, our bodies can assimilate, we can grow and hopefully live long, healthy, happy, and prosperous lives. So the reason I tell everyone, you have to eat rocks every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner if you hope to survive in life. And I tell you that because it's true. You do. You're just eating them in a little different form, a form changed by the plant into edible substances we can eat and our bodies can assimilate. Now, thank you for being patient through that long, boring explanation. I know those seats get very hard, and you probably think back in your mind, I wonder when that old man's going to shut up. Well, perhaps you do, and he's going to shortly, but he has a couple of more things he wants to point out to you about the earth and our dependence on it. Now, remember, the second statement I made was you can't live without rocks. You have to eat them every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Now here, I'm going to show you something else that's essential in our daily life, especially in our modern day lives. Now, the third statement I made was the entire world's economy is built on and based on rocks. If we had no rocks out there in the earth's crust and on the earth's surface, we'd have no income sources, absolutely no way of earning what we call a living. So I want to show you why we are so dependent on this particular material I'm holding in my hands. Now, what would you call this mineral? Quartz. What would you call this mineral? Quartz, that's correct. This is a milky form of quartz. This is a crystalline form of quartz. If you look over here, I have a display of 20 different forms of quartz that are found in nature. Quartz takes on many forms. This is the commonest, the milky and the clear. Now notice what quartz is composed of. Quartz is 1 part silicon, 2 parts oxygen. Its compound name is silicon dioxide. It has a formula, SiO2, which means for every molecule of the structure of this crystal of quartz, it's 1 part silicon, Si, 2 parts oxygen, O2. Now, why is that important? Let's look at one other thing before I tell you that, answer that. Here I have a white board overhead. On that whiteboard, I show you the 9 commonest elements found in the Earth's crust, and they're listed in their order of importance. The commonest element is oxygen. The 9th commonest is titanium. The 2nd commonest is silicon. Now, those 2 most common elements chemically combine in nature to form this mineral. But the mineral isn't the commonest mineral on Earth. The commonest minerals are feldspars. Quartz is the 2nd commonest mineral found in the Earth's crust. Now, those 9 elements make up 99 1/4% of the Earth's crust. The rest of the elements found on the periodic table make up in the neighborhood of 3/4 of 1%. So you see, they're very rare when you compare them to these 9 elements. And notice in the midst of these elements, essentials in our daily diet. So here we are with quartz. Now, quartz weathers down like all materials and ultimately forms a sediment. So it forms sand. And so all over the world we find quartz sands, deserts full of the sand, seashores, lake bottoms, river bottoms. Wherever we go on Earth, we normally are able to find sand, weathered down particles of quartz. Now, it was discovered a long time ago. Probably around 3000 BC is the first recorded entry in world history of this particular fact. It was discovered about 3000 BC that if you could heat quartz sand hot enough, you could cause it to melt. Now, once they dug fire pits, put wood in, built big bonfires to keep warm at night and to give them light to see, and they would burn for hours. And by morning, when it had burned down, it was only ash left in the fire pit. They'd go out and kick around in the ash, and they would find some things that weren't there the day before when they built a fire. They picked up these strange shaped pieces, held them to the light, and you could see through them. That's when they discovered if you can heat quartz sand hot enough, it will melt and form glass. So glass was discovered about 3000 BC. Look how dependent we are on glass today. And so my wife's telling me I have 10 minutes left because you have to hurry out of here. So I'm going to have a very difficult time putting the last 10 minutes together here, but I'll see to it you get out of here. Now, when they discovered the fact that you could melt sand and form glass, all kinds of work went on. Many glass objects were made. They also, by the 1700s, a long time after, discovered that if you could apply a sufficient amount of mechanical pressure to a quartz crystal, you could make an electric current flow in the quartz. When they made that discovery in the late 1700s, they gave it a special name. They called it a piezoelectric property. It's spelled P-I-E-Z-O, so I pronounce it piezo. There are many who pronounce it, especially in the elite group of scientists, piezo. Now, there are others who pronounce it piezo, but I pronounce it piezo, P-I-E-Z-O, because P-I-E spells pie to me. So, anyway, no matter what you call it, the dictionary now accepts all three pronunciations as correct. So they made that discovery, and so they began working with quartz, and by the late 1800s, radio was invented out of quartz crystal, the use of quartz crystals. And so as time passed, not only did radio come from the quartz crystals, but also they found in the early 1900s that you could take a quartz crystal properly oriented, put it in a time-keeping mechanism, and it made that time-keeping mechanism keep very accurate time. And so they began making watches and clocks. You can go out and buy them. It says quartz on the face of the watch. That means they have a quartz crystal movement in them. More time elapsed, and they decided they wanted to know what gives quartz that very special property. So around World War II time, they decided to try to break the bond between the two elements which formed the quartz, the silicon and the oxygen, and so they put quartz sand in an electric furnace. They heated it up till it melted, it formed glass, but then they heated it hotter and hotter and hotter until they got to 3,250 degrees, and at that temperature, the bond between the two elements is broken, and the oxygen escapes from the furnace, and all that's left behind on the furnace floor is pure elemental silicon. Now, this is called a boule or an ingot of silicon. It's just a small chunk of the complete ingot. It's the leftover, in other words, after they've used the portion they want to use. Now, the next step was to utilize that molten material that they had extracted. So they developed what's called a seed crystal of pure elemental silicon. They clamp that in a hydraulic device. They lower it slowly down into the furnace till it makes contact with the molten silicon on the furnace floor. They allow it to pause there for a period of time in contact with the molten material. Then they begin turning it round and round. Now, I can't do that at the same time I'm drawing it up, because while they're turning it round and round, they slowly, hydraulically draw the seed crystal up. And attached to the tip of the seed crystal, structures like the one in my left hand literally grow up and out of the molten silicon attached to the seed crystal. Now, when they first began experimenting, they could only grow these ingots, as they're called, I-N-G-O-T, or boules, B-O-U-L-E, a boule. They could only grow them the diameter of a quarter, 25-cent piece, and only 10 inches long. Now they can grow them up to 18 inches in diameter and 4 feet long. Now, I want you to picture in your mind, this is a 6-inch diameter. Picture in your mind is 4 feet long. They've taken it out of the furnace when it cools. They lay it on a table. They use a diamond saw blade, and they cut thin wafers off the base, one after another after another. Now, they make these different diameters, 4-inch, 6-inch, 12-inch, 18-inch. Now, once they have made them, the next step is to polish one side of the wafer they've cut to a mirror finish. Somewhere I have a way of getting that out. There it is. So I'm showing you here a couple of examples. This is a 4-inch wafer. They're rough like this on both sides when they cut them. Then they polish one side to a mirror finish. Here is a 12-inch. But remember, they make them up to 18 inches nowadays. And once they have polished the face, the next step is to etch on the surface electronic circuits. So here you'll see some electronic circuits etched on the surface of this silicon wafer. Now remember, this all used to be part of quartz sand, weathered down particles of quartz, and that's what it was extracted from. So once they have done that, and remember, as I mentioned, they make many sizes, and in this particular container I have 6-inch diameter discs with electronic circuits etched on them. Once they have etched them on the surface, they cut them out. When they cut them out, they have looks similar to what you see here. They make hundreds of different circuits, all with different applications and purposes. And they make them from microscopic sizes up to around 2 inches in rectangular shape. And they all then play a major part in our daily lives. The next step after they've cut these out is to assemble them in all kinds of electronic apparatus. So today, the world's largest industry is the electronics industry. I don't know of any other industry that isn't dependent upon the electronics industry. And the world's richest men's fortunes are built on the electronics industry. Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, a Mexican gentleman, I can never think of his name, is another one of the 48 to 50 billion-dollar billionaires whose fortune is based on the electronics industry. So here we have the world's largest industry, millions and millions of jobs throughout the world dependent upon that industry, the world's richest men's fortunes all built on that industry. But what is the industry built on? Sand. Isn't that an interesting thought? Especially if you think back to one of the oldest books in the world where it tells us, never build your house on sand. Oh, I think that's quite an interesting thought to carry in our minds. So I again spent a lot of time on that, but I want you to realize that you're dependent upon the earth for everything. I mean everything, physically. Now, I would have normally gone through the basic rocks. We don't have time. I'm going to close by showing you what happens in life when creatures die, what happens to their remains oftentimes. You see examples here in those green and brown backed Riker mounts. And in these glass cabinets, top and bottom, you're looking at fossils that my wife and I have dug and identified from our property in Kern County, California. Over the years, we've identified 62 different marine vertebrates from our dig. Here's a chunk of the ancient seafloor that underlays our property. In the second cabinet, I show you cartilaginous fish remains that we uncover there, sharks, skates, and rays. You'll see some of the giant shark's teeth I have displayed here, 6.5 inches long. I've left some of the giant teeth in the sediment so you can see what they look like in the ground when we uncover them. Up here I've counted out 16,000 fossil shark's teeth just to show you how plentiful they are on our property. They've been our cash crop for years. I've been able to identify 28 different species of shark. I have them represented on the end wall by their teeth. In this and also you'll see stingers, fossilized stingers, some stingrays, mouth plates from rays in there, and various species of shark. And then in this cabinet I have pinniped remains that we uncover there, which are seal, sea lion, walrus, and sea cow remains. That's a skull of a sea lion I haven't finished preparing. You'll see photos on the back wall of some I prepared and sold in times past. These are mandibles or lower jaws of a sea lion, and you see the bones and teeth of a number of pinniped species in that cabinet. All along the bottom, I have the bones of seals, sea lions, walruses, sea cows, dolphins, porpoises, and whales that we uncover there on our property. These are cetacean remains, again, dolphin, porpoise, and whale remains. You'll see fossilized ear bones from porpoise, from dolphins, from baleen whales and other toothed whale species. You'll see flipper bones from whales fossilized, intervertebral discs, vertebrae, skull sections, teeth, and so on. And then again on the end wall, more of the 62 different marine vertebrates we've been able to dig and identify from our property. Now, I left out a great deal in between with the basic rocks, but I want you to realize you're completely dependent physically on the rocks. And I'm going to close by making a couple of statements I'm often criticized for. But you know, I don't care. I'm an old man. I know what I've learned in life, and I share with others what I have learned. Now, I don't think it does anyone any harm to read some excerpts from the oldest book in the world. I recommend you read it all because it's the best instruction book for life that exists. However, if you just read the first 3 chapters, you'll read 2 statements I'm going to paraphrase. It says, "And out of the dust of the ground, the Creator created humankind." Then it says, "Dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return." Now, my question is this: what is dust? Dust is weathered down particles of rocks. So we're told that in the very beginning, we were made out of the rocks. I've tried to show you, you have to eat them every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner if you hope to survive in life. I've also pointed out to you that you'd have no income, no economic base without them. And finally, if you are to take the time, as I suggested, to do a scientific study of your own composition, a scientific study of the Earth's composition, chart what you've learned, put the charts side by side and compare them. Well, what do you find? You find you are physically nothing more than a walking rock yourself. So with all those thoughts in mind, I want to encourage all of you, learn more about the rocks. Because the more you learn about the rocks, the more you learn about yourselves and others. Thank you for your patience. Thank you.